Welcome to the Talent Equation Podcast. If you are passionate about helping young people to unleash their potential and want to find ways to do that better, then you've come to the right place. The Talent Equation Podcast seeks to answer the important questions facing parents, coaches, and talent developers as they try to help young people become the best they can be. This is a series of unscripted, unpolished conversations between people at the razor's edge of the talent community who are prepared to share their knowledge, experiences, and challenges in an effort to help others get better faster. Listen, reflect, and don't forget to join the discussion at thetalentequation.co.uk. Enjoy the show.
This episode of the Talent Equation podcast is brought to you by a new book out called Conversations for the Journey by Richard Shorter from Non-Perfect Dad. Richard, I've got him on the line, and here he is to tell me all about it straight away. Richard, tell us about one of your favourite conversations in the book.
So, Stuart, the whole idea of this book is to give both parents and children a bit of a voice in their sports journey. When I go and do presentations, particularly in the elite context, a lot of parents get quite quickly that did you score, did you win, were you player of the match? They understand quite quickly how those can be detrimental, but it's trying to give ideas to fill that void. And so number one in the book is this isn't about me. What do you want from me on your game day or training day? Which is such a simple question, but it's such a powerful question because it's allowing the child the voice to basically take ownership of that car journey before, how the parent is during the game and afterwards, allowing the child to, and I suspect in most occasions, just say, cheer me on, enjoy yourself, don't embarrass me, don't make too many comments from the sideline. Can we not listen to Radio 4 in the car on the way there? But so a very simple question, trying to enable parents and children to kind of hear one another in what can be quite an emotional experience of doing sport together.
I really wish I'd had this book when I was a child. I might have said to my father, Dad, it's not the best when you shout, get it in the onion bag, Stewie. Anyway, brilliant. It's a brilliant book. It's been by my bedside. I've been having some great conversations with my kids as a result of the book myself. So I can highly recommend it for everybody else to go out there and buy. Where can they get it from, Richard?
They can get it from my website, which is non-perfectdad.co.uk. And then if you go to /talent equation, there's like a secret back door there where you can get a bit of a discount there for getting it through the podcast.
Bonuses for everybody all round. So head there, pick it up, and I'm sure that it will help you. And the best thing about this, by the way, is it's also great for you if you're a coach, because it actually gives you some really good ideas about how to frame conversations with kids when you have as a coach as well as being a parent. So there's loads and loads of angles on this. So highly recommend it. Go out there, get it, and take advantage of the bonus.
Well, here we go, trying new things, as always. This time I'm driving along the delightful M6, doing 50 miles an hour, and I'm joined this week by three, troubadours, amigos, compatriots in coaching. I don't know what we're going to call them. I've got John O'Sullivan on the line. John, hey, how are you?
It's great to be on, Stu. I don't think I've actually officially been on your podcast. I remember one time we tried to record it, and it all fell apart. The technology fell apart.
Yeah, that was back in the Skype days, wasn't it?
Back in the Skype days.
Yeah, that was a false dawn, sadly, wasn't it? It was a great conversation as well, which is a big shame.
Yeah, I know.
And Juan Gonzalez Mendia, you are here as well.
How are you, Stuart?
I'm fine. It's good to have you back on. What's going on in your world?
Great to be here. Well, trying to get this conference off the ground, really. Looking forward to the new year.
Right, well, we'll circle back to that because I definitely want to talk about that as a starting point, just to talk about the whole thing, and we can use that as our launch pad. And back by popular demand, Mark Bennett, MBE. How are you, Mark?
I'm awesome, Stuart. Just finished a great leg session, fantastic food, and now talking to this brotherhood.
I assume when you say a great leg session, they were your legs.
Yeah. I don't think anyone deserves the pain that I put my legs through to anyone else.
Living and breathing the philosophy, Mark, as always. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so Juan, let's jump right in. I mean, you mentioned, future of coaching. You've taken a big leap of faith, got us three people, and tried to herd us like cats to create this sort of unique event. Really, talk me through it. I mean, what possessed you to do something like this, and then secondly, let's delve into what we're going to be talking about, and we'll go around the panel, I suppose.
Well, I think we'll circle back to about 6-7 months ago, where I was fortunate enough to get in touch with you. We record our podcast together, where we did a bit of role playing in terms of coach development. That triggered a bit of noise around the internet, especially in social media. And a couple of weeks after that, I was fortunate enough to meet John at the Way of Champions conference in Boulder, Colorado, which was fantastic, life-changing, for sure, coaching-changing for sure as well, experience. And when we finished those 3 days in America, I told John, I said, look, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for the experience. And I said, I'll see you at some point over in the UK, because I want to bring you across the pond. I want to bring you across the pond, and you've got to spread your message and your philosophy to a lot of people that I know over there. So that was pretty much it. And obviously the influence from Mark, being both of you, both of your mentors, really. It was just too big to say no to. So I said, well, as you rightly put it, so let's go for a gamble here and see if we can get an amazing group of people in the same room at the same time. So here we are.
Fantastic. I've been trailing it on the podcast. I know John has as well. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, like you say, it's the first time all three of us will have been in the same room together to be able to kind of, I guess, talk about some of the stuff that we've been doing, both with Mark and separately. John, what have you got planned, I guess? What are the themes of the conversations that you're going to be exploring when you come on over?
Well, I think what's really interesting is, the three of us, bring together, we cross paths in a lot of areas, but I think also diverge into, our own areas. And so I think the way that we have it laid out is, I'm going to stick to some philosophical stuff on, what does great leadership look like? What is quality coaching look like? What do our athletes need from their coaches? Bringing in a lot of the research, bringing in guests that you've had and I've had on the podcast, including, Amanda Visick and Jean Cote and others, so do we really know what kids want from this environment? And then when we look at that, then, what do they want out of their teams? Because, positive dynamic teams is what, another thing that makes sport really fun for children. And so what exactly does that look like? And so bringing in some of the work that we do with Way of Champions in our team development work, and obviously with my colleague, Jerry, 39 national titles later, what are some of the commonalities amongst the teams that year after year perform at a very high level, compete at a very high level? And so we're going to talk about some of those commonalities and look at ourselves as coaches and say, well, am I introducing these type of things into our team environment, or am I not? And I think, one of the biggest things in a room like this, in a room like our Way of Champions conference, is the people that we have there sharing from each other. I think that's where the real impact comes, because what we do in our 2 days together, it's really what you do after that makes all the difference. So getting us all, prompting the conversations, but I think the most important thing, prompting the connections between us. So it hey, if we can connect with you in a day, how deeply can you connect with your athletes so that they'll go? And if we can build these connections from coach to coach, then it's going to be a real amazing thing that they can support each other afterwards walking out of there. That's where I think the real difference comes from.
I mean, there's so much rich conversation to be had in there. I mean, I think we're going to get into really, I think there's some really important things there, because although you describe it as philosophy, and some people might go, we're going to be all a bit philosophical, I think they're really important questions that we need to grapple with. And I'm constantly working with coaches who are grappling with these kinds of questions. So I think that's going to be a really exciting conversation.
Well, I think so, Stu, and A, that's my Jesuit education talking, right? And so, but B, if you don't, let's use a simpler term and say our why, right? If we don't know our purpose, if we don't know our why, and that's not just why do I coach, but why do I coach the way that I coach? And, to go to Joe Ehrman's big questions, right? Why do I coach? Why do I coach the way that I coach? And what does it feel like to be coached by me?
Yeah.
I think that's really what we're going to look at over 2 days, so people can answer those questions for themselves.
Awesome. And so if you're teeing up some of those very important questions around the why, and why do I coach the way I coach, and what is it like to be coached by me, then I guess where Mark and I come into it is a little bit more of the what and the how.
Exactly.
So Mark, you're I suppose going to be, I think you've got some interesting stuff planned for us, because you're not just going to be, I guess, talking the talk, you're going to be walking the walk with one of your mentees, are you not?
Oh, young Alan.
Oh, young Alan, yes.
Yes. Well, I think it's always one of those, I know you guys have had feedbacks from your podcast, and I get it consistently, it's important to understand the why and also the why not and the what. But a lot of people, the question is, how do I bring it alive? What's the practical journey to go through? And as you know, guys, PDS, it's not the panacea, but it's an organic framework that allows you to trip up less and get you to where you need to be. So there's a certain process to go through. And what's great with Alan Keane coming, I know, John, you've recently had Alan on your podcast. I know, Stuart, you've had him on yours. Is he's a practitioner that's living it now, and he lives it, and he can share the challenges and the obstacles that you face, not just at the beginning, but every single day, particularly when you're under pressure in games and when you have a mix of abilities, professional, amateurs working together, drawing in younger players with experienced players, the practical challenges we all have every single day when it comes to coaching. And it's not a pure, this is great, we just need to do this and magic's going to happen. It's understanding how to be organic and flexible in the moment based on what you see, but also understanding, are you seeing what you think you're seeing? Are your self-awareness at the very beginning to understand where you are as a coach and then what you need to do with the intervention? So having Alan there sharing his experience of how he began and what he's doing now, and then me following up and integrating with that of, well, here's the fundamentals. These are what you really need to do first, but then it becomes more flexible as we move on. I think it's going to be really useful off the back of your conversations and John's.
Absolutely. I mean, and so my piece in that, I guess, will also be a little bit about some of my journey, and particularly when I talk about the stuff about the journey towards becoming a master talent coach. I don't want anybody to get the idea that I think I'm a master talent coach, because I'm still on the journey, and I'm very far from it. But it's kind of just sharing some of those learnings and discoveries. And actually, one of those learnings and discoveries was, spending the time I did and subsequently have with you, and then how I've tried to live the philosophy, and I'm still trying to live the philosophy, and I'm also prepared to get a little bit vulnerable and a little bit real, and to have some of my challenges in terms of adopting and employing PDS across multiple contexts, and not just PDS but all sorts of different aspects of my philosophy, and the challenges that I've faced there.
Go on, John, after you.
Well, and I was just thinking to listening to what both of you guys are saying, and I think it's really important for people to understand that these type of events are, it's not just for a coach like Alan who's coaching a national team. I mean, we're getting in the things that we're talking about are for the local grassroots coach or a schools coach or things like that. And so I think sometimes people get scared, or, I know with my own conference, get people saying, well, I can't show up there because there's an Olympic coach there's a national team coach. And then they come, they're like, oh, I'm so glad I came because this stuff does apply to me. So, everything that we're talking about here, Mark, you're talking about the coaching environment, and Stuart, you're talking about the talent pathway environment, and I'm talking about the philosophical environment. I mean, this is for coaches of every level. Everyone belongs in this room. This information is really relevant.
I totally agree, and I'm glad you made that point, actually, because there's a talent development environment. But when I talk about talent development, I'm actually talking about kids who are 5, because everybody's on some sort of talent development journey, in my view. And so it definitely applies to grassroots coach. And if there's anybody out there thinking I can't be there, one thing that they do need to know is that they will find themselves in a room with people who are absolutely 100% prepared to leave their ego at the door, because they're all coming with a genuine philosophy of learning. And there's some fantastic people coming, right, who are very high caliber individuals who are just happy to be in the audience and to be part of the conversation. And if anybody's thinking, oh no, it's not for me, definitely don't, because you'll pick up so much and you'll get so many opportunities for conversations with people. And that, in many ways, is probably some of the value. I mean, the stuff that we will do is really just going to generate the conversation or pose the questions. The actual real value is when people make sense of that together in some of the discussion groups that we'll facilitate, or even just in some of the informal space.
And I think that keys back into Stuart. And I know recently I've been sharing some video clips from my clients. I know one of them was shared, I think, 20,000 plus times, of some 5, 6, 7-year-olds just self-managing, communicating, stimulating learning. They're exactly the same principles that I use with the high-level elite professional players and coaches. It's about actually how to influence, how to engage, how to get people to start thinking and helping and supporting and challenging each other. So there is no barometer of who is this for. If you're somebody, and actually if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, it makes no difference. The principles that we're going to share is what can I take, and that's where people need to be selfish, is what can I take to allow me to be a better person, to allow me to influence others. And that's that combination of being selfish in order to be selfless.
Hey, Mark, and sorry, see, Stu, this is the problem having 2 podcast hosts where we're used to jumping in, right? I would just say, Mark, if you can expand on that, because this is the thing for me, is like, how many people that who I've introduced your work to, right, through the podcast or whatever, say things like, that'll never work with my athletes. And I mean, I have people who coach 8-year-olds who say I can't do this stuff, and I say yes, you can. And I have people who coach 22-year-old really high level athletes who are like, my athletes would never do that. I'm like, well, that might be on you. It's not on them. They're certainly capable of this.
Yes, and one of the biggest key areas when people get past it is a lot of the time the limitations of the people that we're influencing coaching are our own limitations on what we think they can and can't do. And the videos I've shared recently on Twitter, they're not me coaching. They are coaches, some voluntary coaches, some community, some professional coaches that are using the exact same principles. And I think I've worked with over 30 sports now, and that's the common question I get, Johnny, as well. It wouldn't work here, or it wouldn't work with my level of IQ of people. Well, they're not from private schools, or it's community, or it's age, or it's ability. I have mixed groups, Mark, it didn't work. And that's why, commonly, I know you've all experienced a little bit of it. I say, well, let me take the session then. I don't even know your sport, so, let me share with you the impact it can have. And I'm always open to do that, because I truly believe that when you know how to press the right buttons and really engage with people, it's so impactful at any age, any ability.
I think there's something in that, Mark, which is, and something else I wanted to just drill out as well, which is, I guess people who've been listening to the podcast you've done with me and with Alan and with John might have gone away with the impression that PDS is basically about UAEs and the rule of 3. There's quite a lot more to it than that.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is an opportunity to really get into the weeds a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the first session on the Saturday I'm delivering after Alan. Alan will talk about so many other things. The important critical elements is it's about developing that culture. How do I develop it? How do I even know what it looks like? And how do I know what to do to bring it alive and keep it alive? And these are all the little elements. And I know you guys know my big passion is about the adherence element to supporting change. So one, we need to understand where we are as a coach at any level, our self-awareness, how accurate are we, our ability to self-evaluate us, embracing our uniqueness, but understand where we are and understanding then how we interact. And then from that, actually deciding what are the elements I need to do, the focus elements for me to have the biggest impact on my journey of developing excellence within myself, and then making sure you have a support mechanism in place to support your change, which is as tough for you as asking an athlete with an ingrained habit to develop a new habit. There's no difference in developing an athlete to a coach.
And so linked to that, one of the areas that I also intend to explore is some of the stuff that I've kind of researched and applied around the whole area of resilience. And I'm deliberately using the word resilience and athlete resilience because this is an area that is increasingly becoming a very hot topic in the world of coaching, where coaches are dealing with athletes that are presenting with a range of particular individual challenges, and some with actual genuine concerns around mental health, and so as a result of that, one of the areas that I intend to explore is how coaches should be able to, I guess, work in a way that they can still stretch and create enough challenge and create the right environment for learning to take place, whilst at the same time ensuring that progression is taking place, which might require challenge, without causing it to be an environment where individuals feel either marginalized or overly pressured or any of those sorts of things. And that very much aligns to some of the stuff that you talk about around adherence, because some of the strategies that I will talk about there are very closely aligned to some of the principles that you talk about around adherence and bringing about change.
And I think it's something that we don't speak about enough with coach development. For me, it's the number one. We have to put that high up, is understanding that a player at 5 years old is a human being, a coach at 16, 15 or 40 is a human being. And asking someone to continue to do something they want to do, but do it in a different way and feel they're on a loan and not regressing back to what they normally do because it's a new skill, so it's uncomfortable, it's not working. Expect people to do that on their own is pretty unfair. So it's understanding how we can support the very influencer that will actually maximize the influence of the people they're working with. You know, the pupils, the parents, to the children, or coaches to the athletes and players.
So go on, John, jump in.
Yeah. So I'll throw out to both of you guys here. I just did a coach development clinic 2 nights ago, and very typically in that, I get a comment from a coach saying, I don't know if I'm going to keep coaching. It's the kids these days. They're so different, right? They just don't do this. And so I throw out maybe to you, Stuart, first, and then to Mark, what's your answer to that, right? Because this is what we're asking about is, being resilient. I was actually just reading this quote right before we started our call today, and it's from a book called Resilience by a Navy SEAL named Eric Greitens, I think. And he says, the naive mind imagines effortless success. The cowardly mind imagines hardship and freezes. The resilient mind imagines hardship and prepares. And, I think this is what we're kind of talking about here as coaches and as athletes. If we want resilience, like, first of all, we have to believe that the kids are capable of doing this.
100%. And I actually think a lot of people make a mistake of thinking that. So the word resilience is often conflated with the word mental toughness, and mental toughness is often defined as almost like robustness, as in being able to withstand any form of challenge or pressure or whatever it might be, or stress. But actually, you don't want robust athletes.
because robust athletes break. What you want is resilient athletes. Now, the difference with resilient athletes is a resilient athlete can adapt, can be flexible, can find their way around the boulder, or whatever's in their path, and is able to cope with that situation, because what they've got is a series of coping strategies. And your point, John, actually is a really, really, really good one. I like the example you use, which is this idea of, the coach is saying, kids these days, I can't cope with them. That's actually, I don't know whether that coach probably realized it at the time, and you probably explored it with them. That's actually a damning indictment on them, not the children. Because what it means is that we as coaches aren't being resilient. We aren't able to adapt to the changing needs of a different generation. What we're doing is saying, no, it's actually, they need to adapt to me because I am a certain way and they need to work with me. And if they're not engaging with me, then it's a problem.
Right. What I say to him is anyone having success with children today? And of course they say, well, yes. I'm like, well, then it's not the kids, is it? Right? It's you. You're the common denominator. A lot of people don't like to hear that.
I think this is the important element too. And I know sometimes, especially when they first meet me, they find me quite daunting because I ask a question and I'm actually listening to the answer, and I may follow up with what they may see as another challenging question. But it's understanding that if coaches are coaching, most aren't paid that well. Most are paid absolutely nothing, but they're doing it because they're passionate about it. So I haven't met any coaches that are deliberately trying to demolish a coaching session. They do things because that's the way they believe, with the toolkit they've got and their awareness of options. They're using their options. They're just not effective options. So it's saying, look, you're not a bad person. You're doing a fantastic job. Your intent is honourable. But are there other ways that we can explore to actually help you influence people that you're struggling with in this moment?
That's a really good point. People are doing the best they can with the tools they have right here, right now. A well-worn military phrase. It's just that what they haven't spent the time to do is to increase the range of skills or tools that they have in their locker or in their skills bag in order to be able to do the job more effectively. And by engaging in this way and broadening their horizons in terms of the capabilities and skills, not only do they become more effective at helping those individuals to achieve whatever it is they want to achieve, but actually from their own resilience perspective, they're actually more capable of actually being able to deal with a range of different people. There is no doubt in my mind that through the work I've done with you, Mark, I am far more confident about being in any environment. I mean, you could literally throw me in any environment with any group of children from any walk of life. I went recently to a boxing gym, about a year ago, went to a boxing gym in a very, very tough area of Manchester. And I could have coached those kids. Now, they were tough kids, right? But I could have coached them. Now, you take me back to before that time, I couldn't have done that. I could have worked with my nice middle-class kids that I work with on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, but I'm not sure I could have done that. But I have the confidence to do so now. Why? Because I've got the tools.
And you've not only got the tools, Stuart, now you're effectively at self-evaluation. So you're self-evaluating experiences you're having and come up with objective, impartial conclusions, more so than in the past where you might have been, reaffirming some negativities in your own belief or abilities, or that could be sometimes blamed on the situation. It's them, it's this, it's because of this. And actually no, I just need to find another way, but we can still do it. You've now just got other ways.
Yeah.
Which is just continuing to expand. I bet if we had this chat in 5 years' time, you'd have even more ways, or more efficient at the same ways you have.
Yeah, I think the big difference, I would say, though, is previously I probably would have just continued down a similar path and then got increasingly frustrated. And I definitely had thoughts like John's. I'm not very good at this. I'm not having the impact I want to have. Right. And it's just because, sometimes you come up against a particular challenge or whatever it is, particular group. If you've got a range of different capabilities, a range of different tools, then actually you can find different ways to reach those people. If you haven't got that range, it's like you haven't got a broad enough vocabulary. It's almost an equivalent of that.
And then the frustration sets in, yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, again, athletes, children or adults, they'll rise to the standard or they'll fall to our low expectations as well. And I mean, certain coaches have already given up on half their kids because of, quote, kids these days. And, I've said that to people in a meeting where they said, I got 10 kids here on my group that are just here to wear the jersey and go to the parties. And I said, well, it sounds like they've already met your expectations of them then. So, what else do you expect of them? You're not pushing them. You've given up on them already. So they're just doing what you think they're capable of doing. Obviously there comes a time and a place where certain athletes and certain teams are not living up to the standard and they don't get to be a part of it anymore. But it's amazing to me how quickly some people give up on kids, or they compromise their own principles and standards, and let a kid slide by. And I think, we've all been involved in coaching long enough now to have those kids who don't really appreciate it in the moment, but 10 years later, out of the blue, you get a phone call or an email or someone's in town and they just say, you know what, I really appreciate what you did for me. And I hated you then.
Yeah, they're the moments. Hey, Juan, you haven't jumped in. You haven't jumped in yet. What are you thinking?
I'm just writing alone here. I think my hand is going to have a cramp in a minute now with all these notes that I'm taking from you three gurus. It's an interesting one. I've had the same as John. I've had kids this day, we just need to give up on them. They're going down this route and there's nothing we can do about them. My question is always the same one. And it's somewhere along the lines of who's been here, who's in this room, has been coaching for whatever number of years. People tend to put their hands up 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then I'll ask them again, well, is that because you've been doing the same thing year after year after year after year? So have you got 15-year experience, or have you got 1 year that you're just repeating over and over and over? And they sort of looked at me like if I had two heads or something. And the follow-up question is, have children changed? Are we different? Yes, we are different. Thank God we are different. We are evolving all the time. And the fact that we're still, or a lot of people are doing still the same things with them, well, I'll go back to your gents, your points. I couldn't agree more. It's because they haven't changed, they haven't evolved, they're still doing the same things they've been doing for a number of years. So yeah, I think it's up to people like yourselves and these channels and these sort of meetings for us to try to change things a little bit and try to adapt and expand on our experience.
John, let me play podcast host to you a little bit. On that subject, really, around this whole area around, I guess, children now. I feel, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, I feel that children need us more than ever. And the reason I say that is I think we in the world of sport in the past, in some cases, perhaps not all, but in some cases, we have been sometimes just a place where children would come and it could be if they wanted, it could be a place of refuge, it could be a place of safety, it could be a place where they don't have to worry about the pressures of daily life. My little boy, we've got this crazy system in the UK with our education system where he's doing his SATs. They have similar in America, I think. And he's 10 years old, and he's worried because they've just done a test and he didn't do very well. And how am I going to get on? And it's all very important. And it really isn't. It really doesn't really make a great deal of difference necessarily to the long term. It becomes more important later on. But it's just a testing system that the government thinks really important, so they can tell which school is doing well and which school isn't. And he's got a lot of stress. He's actually got a lot of kids that age got a lot of stress. So he comes to sport and we'll forget about that, right? We can have some real enjoyment, real fun. So I'm not only the principle around the idea of fun, but actually we can have some fun and we can also grow together. And that's a place where children, I think, nowadays are getting less and less of that opportunity because they've got to go to
band practice or whatever, or music class, or they've got to do this, and everything's about performance. And what we can do, I think, is offer coaches a way to enable people to still progress and develop, but without turning it into this kind of crazy performance show. So that's a long-winded question. I'm just opening up an opportunity for you to just wade into that space.
Yeah, how much recording space do you have on this disc?
I'm recording in the cloud, so it's
yeah, so 100%. I would agree. Kind of the first part of your question, that kids need us more than ever. You know, when I was writing my book, Changing the Game, I came across some interesting research out of UCLA. The researcher named Yulda Ools, and she was just talking about values in society and how values had changed. So her research was on television and what were the 5 most important, or the 5 most prevalent values in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s of the 5 most popular television shows for sort of tweens, right? Sort of 12 to 16-year-olds ish. And, these were shows like, I Dream of Jeannie to, in the US, one called Growing Pains to,
yep.
But, all the way up to American Idol. And, in the beginning, the values were things like family and friendship and, camaraderie. And those were what these shows were about, versus the American Idol generation of money, fame. It was all about me. So when we look at sport as a vehicle for what we might call teaching character, I think it's become more important than ever because they're not getting the values from television or popular culture, music anymore. They're not getting them from social media because that's certainly not filtered to show what the good values are. Schools are so outcome focused. They're not really, they're about preparing people for tests, not actually educating people. And that's not a hit on teachers. The teachers are doing what they're basically required by law to do.
Yep.
And so sport has become, I think, more than ever a place where kids need us. They need a coach who shows them that I am an adult role model, mentor who can model the type of behaviors that play well in the world and teach you intentionally every single day the type of things that these sports skills that become life skills. So we use words like grit and resilience and things like that, which, we might call performance character traits. But what about the moral character traits? And that's the respect, integrity, sportsmanship, working well with others, compassion, joy, things like that. These are moral character traits, and those don't happen by doing a handstand or hitting a ball. Those happen when coaches intentionally weave them into their teaching. And so, as coaches, we have such an opportunity to impact people, not just this season, but for the rest of their life. I don't know of any other area where adults are put with children in a place that they can be so impactful, and yet most of them get no training. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, you just can't expect people to deal with some of these challenges without giving them the tools. So we said it before, giving them equipping them for the likely challenges that they're going to face. And actually, I think it's actually very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of almost a little bit like an abdication of responsibility for organizations to think that they can actually put well-meaning volunteers into these roles and not equip them effectively to do that. There was another dimension, by the way, John, that you were talking about there. You listed a whole range of different. The other one I would say is parents, because incredibly, I think parents in their desperate attempts to help or find a way to help their children thrive in this ever ever changing and demanding context that we live in, I think in many cases parents are making some quite big mistakes. I include myself in this, and it's not through necessarily any malice, because I don't think very many parents are out there desperately trying to ruin their kids, but it's because the things that they're trying to do are actually running counter to what they are trying to do. I mean, and we talk a lot about, like, bulldozer parents or helicopter parents or whatever it is, and there's a lot of parents out there
in Canada, they call them snowplow parents.
Snowplow parents. There we go. That's what we're talking about. That's more Oregon, isn't it, up there?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the point, isn't it? They think they're doing the right thing by getting rid of the obstacles in the way of their children, when it's actually the obstacles that the children need to learn to overcome that's going to give them the capabilities to thrive in the rest of their lives.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I think that's the key thing, and it links into what you were both saying there, is that there has always been great coaching and great parenting, and very bad parenting and very bad coaching. Importantly, though, based on the barometer of what you believe as a coach or a parent good and bad is. So one of the things we're still fighting with now, and I don't think it will ever change because humans have different opinions, is some coaches may be coaching based on our barometer pretty poorly, but based on their barometer, they believe they're coaching very well. So until we can recalibrate what is a great coach, we'll continue to have people go, well, I believe this is the right thing to do. I need to tell them, because then that's the only way they're going to remember, and I think I'm doing a great job with that, because Stevie can't think for himself. So it's always that connection with, can we get people to understand what is a great parent, what is a great coach, on a light and shade barometer where we're close and roughly around the same direction, so we can start the stimulus of the conversation. Now we can look at what's working, what's not, what we can adjust. And I think that's sometimes a key thing. Internet obviously has exploded people viewing different people coaching, whereas 20 years ago we'd never see the person on the field because no one would have recorded the session with them, so we would never share our opinion with them.
That's it. Go on, John.
And then the issue sometimes then is, you got to coach the team in front of you, and so it's wonderful to watch Pep Guardiola train in Man City. But then when you wonder, well, what's wrong with my kids, that, this is clearly a great session, Pep's running it, right? And it certainly doesn't look like the way Pep is doing it, But I think all that ties into what you said to me as part of your question before, Stu, is this idea of this focus on outcomes, right? Yeah. This focus on, what matters is the win this weekend. What matters is that we win all our games. What matters is, and this outcome focus society. And then what happens is we use professional sport as the model, which is sport for entertainment, but we're in sport for development, right? And so we use professional sport at this model where, yes, of course, the outcome matters most, or you get fired, right? And when we're working with kids, that's not really the thing. And so we're focusing on the process, on the daily, struggle of getting a little bit better and stretching ourselves. And, what happens when you focus on outcome as teams is you get scared, right? Because you don't control outcomes most of the time. I had one of my college teams watch this movie this fall, and I don't know if it's out in the UK yet, but when it comes out, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. And it's called Free Solo. Have you heard of that at all?
No.
All right. So Free Solo is a documentary about a rock climber named Alex Honnold. And he free solos, which means he climbs El Capitan in Yosemite National Park, the greatest big wall climb in the world with no ropes. So this is a climb that usually some people take 3 days to do, and he does the thing in a couple hours with no ropes. And it's a documentary, and he talks about, when you are 2,000, 3,000 feet above the ground and you have no rope and you have a hold the size of one finger and your toe is on a 1/4-inch thing and you have to reach across to your next hold, you can't be thinking about what's it going to be like when I get to the top, right? The only thing you can be thinking about is this next play, this next move, this next hold. Because if I skip ahead one, I'm toast. I'm falling to my death. And so that's obviously an extreme way of staying in the moment. But I think one of our biggest problems in sport is we're in such a hurry to get to the finish line that oftentimes we go to the wrong finish line and we lose sight of the process. And if I'm preparing a bunch of 11-year-old cricketers or soccer players or hockey players to win at 11, it's a very different type of preparation than if I'm preparing for them to be successful at 17 or 18. And so it is our job as coaches to work with parents and to assure parents that this is okay. This is part of the process. We don't want to win all our games. We want to be stretched. We want to be challenged, but we need to focus on what's in front of us right now. How are we doing today? What are the things that we control, and not just did we win, did we lose? And I think that's a part that a lot of coaches don't want to talk to parents, and yet those parents are the most influential people in those kids' lives. So the idea that you're going to leave them out of the equation and hope for the best is, I think, a little bit short-sighted.
That reminds me, John, of the quote, a female freestyle climber. I about 20 years ago, I heard this quote, and it was, dominate the fear, think only of the move. And it was the same process of purely focus on what you need to do in the here and now. That's where your mind is, that's where your body is, that's where your commitment is.
Exactly. Brilliant. And I mean, dominate the fear. I was in a theater and I was scared to death. I watched this right before Halloween. I'm like, there could not be a scarier Halloween movie than Free Solo.
Yes.
And that for me, Mark, is actually a really good, I think, a good metaphor for, I guess, what is right at the centre of the philosophical standpoint around PDS. Because when people hear the word performance, they think, oh, it's about high performance or elite performance, and it's only about them. But for me, what's at the centre of what you're talking about is actually allowing individuals to actually understand and be really, really clear about, if we were going to do something right now for the next 5, 10, however long minutes, what would it look like if it was really, really good? And once people say it would look like this, or it would feel like this, or whatever it is, to say, and are you prepared to really try and stay in that state for this entire period of time? And they go, yes. And you say, and I'm not going to let you fall back from there. And they go, yes. And then you take them on that journey. They come away from that and they say to you, I have never experienced anything like that before in my life. And if it's anything about sort of almost, the whole essence is about just let's make the moment as rich as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I mean, it keys back into that performance as a behaviour, not an outcome. And I know, linking to what John just said, is I use the same principle with the most elite pro teams that I've ever worked with. We don't follow the scoreline because we know the scoreline is a byproduct of the choices we make in the moment and our commitment to them and our ability to review both the choice and the execution. That's all we're asking people to do. Now, that's all I'm asking a 4-year-old to do, but it's based on their ability and it's based on what the success is for the session. So when we develop that within young children, actually it's very empowering and it's quite engaging and enjoyable, but there is a intensity to it that they get a buzz from. But if we develop those habits, by the time some will not go, obviously move on to top level sport, some will just take that into other parts of their lives. But if they are the minority that do, when they get to 18, 19, 20, early 20s, that's their philosophy in high pressure situations. They're purely going, I know where I need to go. I'm making a choice. I'm committed to it. I'm evaluating the choice, the execution live, and I'm just relentless with that. And then I'm being aware of supporting the people around me. And so it becomes a way of thinking, a way of doing that. Actually, the fear is diminished then. Although, if you sit back and reflect, there may be things that you're very scared of doing. Quite rightly, that gets a buzz from life. But in the moment, you go, okay, so what can I do? Yeah, that's a fine question, but what am I going to do? I'm doing it now, I'm living it. And it's the difference between what I can, what I will, and what I am. And it's getting them to be the I am bit and just embracing the commitment to the choice.
And what a wonderful tool to give your kids as well, Mark. I mean, like, this is these are life tools. And, since I, first crossed paths with you and tweaked, a chunk of stuff that I did, I'd say, two big things that have helped my coaching, which is obviously directly have helped my teams. And again, I talk a lot on my podcast that my current teams that I work with on a weekly basis are, right now 12 and 13-year-old girls. So this is a whole, a very tough time in life. Those kids, they're going through so much. There's so much self-consciousness and everything like that. So many changes in their world to create a training environment where there's more certainty, more control. They have a voice. People care. People listen to them. And something as simple as at halftime of our games where they just come off the field and they get into their position groups and they chat about what's going on. I don't even prompt them anymore, right? They just start solving the problems, and then I call them in and I give one person from each position group an opportunity to make one point of what they see from their side of things. And then usually that covers my halftime talk. I'm like, all right, you guys got it. And sometimes I add one more thing to it and say, let's try this as well. And it's always amazing. The parents are like, it's halftime and you're standing off on the side talking to your assistant coaches and the kids are figuring it out. Why aren't you coaching? I'm like, no, they're coaching themselves. And so this is such a big thing. And I think, the PDS philosophy or methodology, number two, I think one of the biggest problems in coaching is that athletes and teams, they usually go too hard on their easy days and they don't go hard enough on their hard days, right? Or too easy on their hard days. And so, you just played a big match. This is more of a recovery session. Using this type of methodology creates the right pace of practice and the right physical workload on that day. And then on a day that has to be hard, when you're really talking about, staying at this really high level, this really acceptable level, is super important. So like I just did this clinic the other night with the strength and conditioning coach for the Portland Thorns, which is the women's professional team in Oregon. They were the national finalists this year, national champions last year. And he was talking about, when they're starting out, most of their activities are done in 3, 4, 5 minute segments. Go all out for 5 minutes, right? They play 11 aside for 5 minutes and play at a pace that is, you're only playing for 5 minutes. And they say, how hard it is for the players to get a hold of that initially because they're used to playing for 20 and kind of having, lulls and peaks and valleys. It's like, no, you are at a peak for 5 minutes. And really that's what PDS does is say, whatever, it's 90 seconds, you are all in at acceptable to exceptional. And kids do that one time and they're like, man, that was an awesome practice.
And that links in, doesn't it, John, to what Alan shared with you, and he's named it his moments of excellence, where he asks his players how long, and each session they have that, and his aim is to stretch it, but they're owning it, they design it, they run it based on what we've agreed, and it's all about them working together to problem solve, to keep each other to a minimum of acceptable through that journey. And interestingly, when I've ever ran the deliveries, and I do a practical session on every masterclass now, and whenever I go in to consult mentor, I end up running a session. I've never had a session where every coach has observed and player has said it's the most intense, it's the most engaged, and they're making better choices than they've ever had before. So you're saying, hang on a minute, you're telling me this is the best you've ever seen it, and I'm not telling them to do anything. Interesting.
Just unsqueeze. It's almost like I feel like he's squeezing the juice out of every moment. That you're getting as much juice as you can out of every single moment, and that's what I feel like you get here. One of the things I've just been thinking about as I've been listening to you both, Mark, is if we get the opportunity, and we might need Juan to come sprinkle his magic to facilitate this, is I could definitely do with you mentioned it earlier, Mark, about review. So I think review also gets that extra juice out of the session as well. Not just the focus in the moment with the players, but also then getting really high quality self-reviews done. And I could do, I think, with a refresh or a turbocharge or an upgrade on my reviews, because they're okay. I think they're doing pretty well, but I reckon I could get more out of them. So maybe we could do something live with my reviews, maybe with some players, or we get some of the coaches to get out there and be participants, and then you can take me and squeeze my review and get it better.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? What we're saying is we want to support coaches to help them be more efficient in the moment, to allow them to make better decisions in an effective way, appropriate to the situation. It's not about making coaches effective at self-reflection an hour after a session, because we have many fans that watch football that are very effective at that, but they couldn't coach a football team, etc., etc. So but interestingly, and I know you're aware of it anyways, that the principles that I use when I run mentoring coaches or mentoring mentors are exactly the same principles that the coaches are using to develop the athlete, is getting them in the moment to be confident of their awareness of what they're doing, their state, their choices, their commitment, and being able to even give themselves a pat on the back, say, I'm nailing this, I'm keeping going, or understanding what needs adjusted and changing it. So it's about allowing a coach to be in the present and being accurately aware of what they're doing in the moment to allow them to make better informed choices, and importantly, managing their state and being aware of it to allow them to be in a position to make effective informed choices.
And the coaches being clear on their UAEs.
Yes, definitely.
And I think also when you do review these practices as well, I mean, oftentimes the bad practices, or that in your mind in the moment you're like, that was awful, aren't quite as bad, right? Or there was a few players who weren't good, but for the most part, everyone was doing what was asked, and a few were dragging it down. And the ones you think were really good, you look at those and go, how could I have, stretched the players more in this session as well? Because maybe we were ready to move on and we didn't. And so this constant, review is, to watch a videotape of your training session is, I think, just a wonderful way to become better as a coach, and and it's uncomfortable, but that's how we get better.
And there's a key progression to that, John, that I think is really critical. I believe Alan mentioned it on one of his podcasts. I'm not sure if it was yours, John, or yours, Stuart, but in the understanding that you self-reviewing your own video is useful. However, you can miss so much based on your filters. So the next level is getting a peer to mentor it with you, to observe. That's good, but it's not as good as someone that understands these type principles to peer review you. And then the last one, obviously I sit above the top of those, but it's that understanding of mentoring is really important. So, and it can be mentoring from another coach, assistant support. It could be your assistant coach. If it's somebody, though, that actually is a peer support that can allow you to observe and be more clinical, that understands these principles, it takes it to another level. And I think, John, you've experienced that when we did the online mentoring with you, didn't we, with the video? That's kind of the example of you did it, you picked up so much, and then we had the discussion after I viewed it, and you picked up so much more.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It was great. And some of those moments are, moments where you feel like, man, I intervened poorly there, or I interjected myself poorly. And, you're saying, no, I see what you were trying to do there. Maybe you could have said it differently, but your decision to step in was not the wrong one, right? So, it's not all about, criticism and making, it's not all critique. I mean, there's many times where it's like, we're also catching you being good. And, probably most people listening to this won't remember, but when I had Mark on my podcast for the first time, I did this. We went through the process. I videoed, put a GoPro on my chest, videoed a session. And I would say in the last 10 years of coaching, this has to still be my worst session ever. Like, nothing went well. The players weren't into it. They were really uncomfortable with the camera. And I went back and forth of like, I'm not even going to send this to Mark, but it was great. And I did, and we went through it. And at the end, I felt better about it than it was, even though it wasn't good. it was better than I thought it was in my initial moment. And again, if I can be that vulnerable in that moment to say, here you go, Mark, this is the worst I've ever done. That was a good moment for me as well as a human being.
And that's where I link into, John, that thing about being selfish and selfless. So that's an example of you as a coach being selfish. That you say, I'm sending this to Mark because I want to get better and I want some objective view to see if I'm out of sync, I'm saying things are unacceptable and actually they're not. The value in what you're doing, the intent was right, or you're missing things. That's about you being selfish as a coach. Selfless is that point of actually you're doing it because you want to help everybody else around you. And you will spread the word to share freely the stuff you've learned to help other people get better. And any great coach, any great athlete needs to be a combination of both, but understand the meaning of that. I think that's really important.
I think the sort of just to kind of draw our conversation to a close, because I know we could talk for ages. One of the things I think that's probably worth mentioning is that obviously we've spent quite a bit of time designing this, and we're all, I think, really keen to ensure that this is not going to just be. There's obviously going to be the sharing of ideas, and there's obviously going to be the sharing of thoughts, research, principles, concepts. So there will be some knowledge to be shared, but we're very, very keen to make sure that this isn't just a stand and listen, take some notes, and bye-bye, see you later. This is very much around people will get the most out of this by engaging, having conversations. There'll be loads of opportunity for that informal, what I call sense-making space, where people get a chance to either reflect with others. What do you think about what we just saw? What do you think about what we just heard? They'll get to reflect with us. We'll be sitting there. They'll be able to come and ask us questions. Like a lot of conferences, you don't get a chance to ask questions. They'll have those really good high-intensity Q&A stuff, but not just Q&A from the front, but also afterwards, sitting around our tables, us floating around in the informal time over dinner and all those sorts of different things. And then I like to describe it almost as there's going to be 2 days, and it's going to be like an exploratorium where we actually all collectively get to explore everything that we're trying to do to make sense of our respective worlds together. We're going to try and act as guides where possible, but at the same time, I'm going to be a participant. I know John will be a participant. I know Mark will be challenged to refine his mentoring techniques and all those sorts of things. And we're seeking to try and to be learners on the day as well. Is that a fair way of describing what people could experience?
I would say, 100%. I mean, that's the plan. Is I think first of all, when we talked about doing this, right, when Juan first approached you and I, Stu, and we said, let's add Mark, and then some of the other, let's add Alan, and I think Richard Cheatham will be there as well, and so it's just some of the people in this room for the panels. But as we were laying out, tentative schedules, it's like, where's the room for discussion? Where's the room for people to connect? So I'm reading this fascinating book right now. It's called The Death of Expertise. And it's a guy just talking about how we've lost sight of the true expert because now everyone has an opinion because everyone has a platform and we weigh them all equally. Yeah. And he starts the book with this amazing quote. He says, "Never before in history have so many people had so much access to so much knowledge, yet been so resistant to learning." Right? And it's just an amazing quote. And this is what we might confront when we work with parents, when we work with athletes, when we do this. And so I think this is going to be just a great room and a great space for people who are not resistant to learning. You're going to get a ton of information, right? Some of that you've had access to, new things as well. And what we hope at the end of this time is that you walk out of there like, and this is what I'm going to do first, like that you will have an action plan as well. Not just a book full of notes is nice, but if you do nothing with that, then we've failed you. Our hope is that you'll be connected with coaches who can mentor and review your stuff and help you moving forward. And then also, but that you have a plan of like, this is what I will add tomorrow, right? This is what I can do on Monday. And if we do that, then we'll have been successful.
That's the important part, John. Is, I mean, I'm very anti any delivery you go on, whether it's a day or half day, where people walk away and say that was interesting. I don't want to be part of something that's interesting. I want to be part of something that has an impact. So back to the selfish, whoever comes on it, I want them to be able to explore, to challenge, to go, okay, well, how can I use this? What can I take from this? And actually, how can I bring it alive? The applicational of the theory. So they have something tangible. They can go away and add value to what they do, whether it's a parent, teacher, or a coach, makes no difference. So that's where I want people to be selfish when they come, to be honest.
Awesome. At my last podcast, Andrew Gillett, who's a great coach developer, said that he thinks the mission for a coach developer or anybody who's an educator, or in this case, in any way, is to be a light, to be a ladder, and to be a bridge. And I think that's definitely what we intend to try and do over those 3 days. Juan, right. People want to get involved. They're excited. They're getting on board. Is there a Christmas special on offer here? What's going on?
There is all sorts of things going on, Stuart. We've got a number of discounts going around the internet and social media. If you are currently going through some sort of higher education, if you are involved in some sort of degree to do with coaching, sports science, or any degree at all, and you're interested in adding this experience to your current studies, get in touch with us. The email is info@SudAmericaCoaching, and that is I'll start again. That is info@SudMerica Coaching, so SudAmericaCoaching.com. Get in touch. We'll ask you for a note from your institution, college, university, whatever you're going through. Get in touch and we'll make sure you get a discount on that. Also, if you are a member of the Magic Academy, which I know they're very good friends of both of your shows, gents, and Rusty and Fletch have been on board as well. They are getting a discount as well. If you consider yourself a wizard, then come on board and you'll have a discount on that. Final reminder, this is happening on Friday the 4th of January, so straight after the New Year's festivities. We are going to be starting at 6 o'clock on the Friday, and we're going to go through to Saturday at 5 o'clock. There'll be loads of different instances for people to have roundtable discussions, listen to you three, exchange. We'll have 2 network opportunities at a local establishment as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be 2 fascinating days. I couldn't be more grateful for your time today and from coming on board with this fantastic project. Get out there. Yeah, if you're out there listening to this, get in touch. Twitter handle is @SUD Coaching, Coaching. Send us a message, send us a tweet. If you want to bring a group of people from your organization, there are discounts for that as well. And there might be a special Christmas on its way as well.
So awesome stuff. I also know that Juan's been really kind, and he's offering a special rate to subscribers to Talent Equation, and and particularly to the people who are Patreon backers. So that's just a shameless plug for that. And if you want to know more about that, then get in touch with me and I'll let you know. The other thing I would just say, Juan, no one said any thanks to you yet. Listen, you've done the hard yards. You're the one who pulled us together. You're the crazy geezer who's, kind of having to put all the expenditure on the line and all that sort of stuff to get people in a room. And I know you're planning on putting together a great event. But I'm really grateful for you being prepared to be brave enough to go and do it. Not everybody would, and I'm excited about having the time with these 2 guys. Every time I get any time with them, I always learn masses like I have today, and I'm really thankful for you for putting it on.
Well, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
I can't wait either, guys. Jerry and I always say sometimes you got to jump off the cliff and grow your wings on the way down. And, that's kind of what we've done to set up this event, and having this, short conversation today just makes me super excited to get in the room with everyone a little while from now, because I think it's just going to be an amazing thing.
Oh, don't forget the raffle prize.
Oh, yeah, the raffle prize. Tell them about the raffle prize, Mark.
So we'll do a raffle with everyone at TENS, and the winner will get a free online mentoring session with me.
There you go.
That's fantastic.
At least £15,000 or something similar.
975, Stuart.
It's worth way more than that, Mark. Way more. Right, guys, listen. Before I lose signal as I drive down the M6, I really appreciate you all taking your time, especially nice and early for you, John. Getting later for us here. Like I said, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great new year. It's a great way to start the new year, and really looking forward to it. So thanks for coming on.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Equation podcast. If you like the show, then please consider supporting it by leaving a review on your favorite podcast player, telling your friends about it, or even becoming a hero and show your appreciation by becoming a patron. Just head over to thetalentequation.co.uk and click on the Becoming a Patron button at the top of the page.
So there you have it. Really enjoyed catching up with Juan, Mark, and John. It's always great to pick up with them and chew the fat. And I am really excited about getting together with them in the flesh. It'll be the second time John and I have actually got together, but we've never actually done a conference together. So I'm really excited about hearing him speak in the flesh and learning alongside him and Mark. And we're going to have some really good fun, and there's some great people coming. As we mentioned, Richard Cheatham's coming along. The recently awarded Coach Developer of the Year. I was there at the awards when that was announced, and just to see Richard's face when the announcement came that he was actually the Coach Developer of the Year was absolutely fantastic. It was richly deserved. He's a great guy, and so there's like a double bonus that he's actually going to be along there as well. So really looking forward to that event. As always, if you want to continue on your learning journey, then there are a few opportunities to do so. The conclave keeps growing, but I'm able to include some more people into the conclave. So if people want to join in, then they can head over to the website, and everything's to be found on the Patreon button. And I've got some new developments in the new year where we're going to open up some additional spots and maybe even do some sport-specific enclaves. So a few things coming down the line, but in the meantime, have a great week of coaching, and as always, ditch those drills.